was born in Bombay, and I have a younger sister. I grew up in a nuclear family in Bombay. My father was also an academician and a scientist, and essentially we lived in a very sheltered and comfortable life. And then when it came to making a career choice, for some reason I was fixated on doing engineering because I liked maths, and I wasn't such a big fan of biology, though in those days it was like natural that if a girl student is doing well academically, then she automatically will go for medicine. I would have got in medicine. In fact, at the end of the 12th standard, I did go to the medical colleges as well as the engineering colleges for the final form, which has to be filled for admissions. But it was really funny because I went with my mother, and when I went into the hospital to pick up the form, there was a huge smell of formalin there, the formaldehyde that they use. And I got really put off, and I just literally ran away from there, and I said, I can't do this. I mean, I don't even like biology, and I may get the seat, but I'll be uncomfortable the rest of my life. So that was it. I mean, I never went back into biology or anything ever. And I got the admission in engineering, and I got it in civil engineering. And there was a small bit of apprehension because when I went into the class, I realized that I was the only girl among 60 boys. And it was like, I went to an all-girls school. So this was like a sudden, rapid transition. But like I said, my father has always been my role model, and he never distinguished between girls or boys. And with 2 daughters, he encouraged us to, do whatever we wished and also excel academically. So he in fact said, no, you continue here, that should not be any deterrent for you, and you just continue with this. Well, his dream actually was that I take up construction management and sort of manage large construction companies. Probably the father's dream was, slightly different from what I finally did. But I did the engineering, I did pretty well, and I had a very good time. I had a very good set of classmates. I was pretty pampered, being the only girl in class. So I had a nice 4 years of engineering, and then I got selected in the campus interview out of in one of the large consultancy firms in those days for civil engineering, Tata Consulting Engineers. So subsequently, actually, I decided that I want to do a master's, and I applied to the US. Actually, I finally ended up doing PhD in structural engineering, structural dynamics. And my husband also was at Duke University in the US. And finally, we returned to India. I have 2 sons. Then we returned to India, and then, it's always today the biggest challenge for a working couple is getting a job in the same place. So we decided to move to Chennai, and I also had 2 offers here. I finally selected the National Institute of Ocean Technology because it was a very young and new institute in those days, and different from the standard. I was advised by many people to not get into CSIR, not because CSIR would have been a very good choice also, but this was a young institute and probably with new, there's a lot of potential for new R&D. And I also felt that was a good thing to do. So fortunately, both of us got jobs in the same place in Chennai. And I think any wish that I would give for young women would be that, when you want to get into future careers and into family life, we should pray that we get, jobs in the same place, because this is really, I don't want to trivialize this at all. It is very, very important and very difficult for women in engineering and STEM actually. So, but this has been a very good decision to join NIOT. I have risen in the ranks because I joined at the, beginning level, sort of next to the beginning level. And then I have grown, and well, I did not, there was no like real choice of, selecting water or energy. Actually, it has had the whole thing, it has been like a tumultuous set of events even within the institute, because it started with a couple of three areas, ocean energy, then there was deep sea technologies, and then there was coastal engineering. And because of my structural dynamics background, I was hired under the ocean energy group, because there was a very long pipeline that had to be analyzed and designed, which was for the first ever 1 megawatt OTEC plant that India had so adventurously taken up, I would say. I mean, we really had, the secretary really had the guts to even think that we should take up that project. But I was actually hired for doing this very specialized analysis. There was nobody else with that background who could have done that. So I was pretty interested in, I learned a lot of things. There was, this offshore was not, though my dynamics was my area, offshore was not exactly my area. So I learned a lot. I used to spend like, hours and days in the IIT library learning a lot of things and reading and understanding. And we did put up a lot of projects and things. And eventually, actually, as we started doing the energy, I think I have written about the Kavrati project. That's where I played a very, very important role. And somehow, because it became so successful, the focus sort of shifted to water. I mean, it was not intentional, because the original idea was ocean energy when the institute had started. But things evolved when there were more areas added to the institute, and then water became like the kind of an important area for further research. So the low temperature thermal desalination plant that we put up in Kavrati in the Lakshadweep Islands, we actually did it as R&D. It was funded by the Ministry of Earth Sciences. Today, on hindsight, 17 years ago, that was like a small fund. But we managed to do the project in that, and I have played a very, I would think, pivotal role in many of the issues and making it happen in a very record time as well as successfully. So subsequently, more plants were asked to be done, and it's going on. We did scaling up, and that's where I learned even more. I was leading this group now as a now I'm old, but I wasn't that old at that time. So youngish woman trying to lead a group ranging from senior scientists to what we call riggers, or basically the unskilled labor at site. So all our projects are actually taken from the drawing board till the actual commissioning, and then we also analyze the plant for its performance. So in this scenario, I have had to deal single-handedly with ports, the staff at ports, people who operate vessels and fleets offshore when we do the projects. So it has been a very, very varied experience. And I don't think, I mean, it has been very, very, I would say, fulfilling, because over a period of time, I have learned so much. And I think it has made me much more tough, and it has made me more courageous. And all the experience have now, I get more and more ideas on how to take things forward. So I have evolved as a person because of all the experiences and the the implementations of all these projects. So we have made in our group, of course, it's largely, it's a teamwork, and I have been pushing the team quite hard maybe, but then they also like doing this because we're doing some things for the first time in the world. Most of them are first ever projects. They're fully indigenous. They are not, nothing is like bought out from abroad. Everything is put together here. The designs are done in-house. So we are very proud of, seeing our actual effort up there in practice. So that is the way things have come from, from, from Bombay to the US and then to Chennai. Now we have been living in Chennai for the past over 2 decades. And we are probably a slightly rare family. My husband and I both have doctorates from Duke University, and my sons both have PhDs from the US as well. So we are sort of probably a slightly rare breed. And the best, why I have to say this is because there is this, I mean, I don't want to go into the social, sort of background and things, but the point is that there is always this sort of hesitation about women who have a full-time career, and especially a person who goes to field had to, long durations being be away at home, and for that, though the role model is my father, my utmost gratitude is to my mother, because she always came and subbed for me, and my father and the sister used to manage without her when she came to help me out with the children when I used to go to field. So it has been a family effort, and then eventually my mother-in-law also used to look after them when I used to go to field. So it has been like largely a family kind of affair. I mean, everybody, sort of pitches in when there is a need. So, so that way it has been difficult. And, there are a lot of times when you get very tensed up and stressed out, everything. But in the end, when things pay off, it's like, it feels like, yes, it was worth all the trouble. In fact, my kids, when they were small, though I used to be away, they used to say, no, 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 we will manage, and you please go and do it. And they'll ask me all kinds of questions on what I am doing. And unknowingly, I think all these things kind of seep into children, that you have to work hard. And I have watched them grow, and I think they have become very hard working individuals as well. So that's like the long and short of the entire thing. But basically, what my father used to do kind of interesting work. He was a consultant for many projects. There was once when he had taken me. He was studying blind students, okay, and color the color recognition for the blind. It was a special project, and he used to have several projects from the World Bank and things. And this was something where he just took me, just myself, to assist him, into a class of blind children, and you watch him as to what can be done, and how he conducts the tests, and what is the final fallout. And then later when we came back, he also asked me to help him with evaluating the results and things like that. So I guess that thing had been like, as I grew up, he used to take me for all these things many times, and then it was like probably ingrained naturally, that, or the curiosity of scientific investigation. It's not just a job. Scientific investigation was always in the back of my mind. So that is why never were we told that you stop at your engineering degree. My sister, by the way, is a doctor, and she also has done her MD, just as I have studied ahead. And there's a small little aside I will tell you. So when I got into engineering, I was the only girl in class, right? So there were some neighbors and relatives who would come to my parents and say, oh my God, if she's an engineer, whom will you look for a groom for her? Right? Because if she herself is an engineer, how can she get somebody who is like, more than that? Because in those days, engineering, and it was like, these kind of private colleges were not there in those days, when we had just about 400 seats in Maharashtra, and we had managed to come through merit and things. So it was like one seat has been given to a girl kind of thing. So and my parents used to just laugh it off and say, that's okay, we'll worry about it when the time comes. So that gave us a very it gave me the confidence that I am being supported, and I can continue to do what I want without being hindered, or without any pressure for anything. So that way, I hope that answers your question. But basically, like, we were allowed to study and do whatever we kind of did, actually. Yeah, no, actually, this is important, because there is something that it is not only during the the formative years. As I started working here in Chennai, And, in general, I mean, every institution, all human beings, there is bound to be, disturbances in the office, office politics and things like that, right? It's always there. And especially being a woman, I probably had to face more of it. And still in India, it is difficult to take a woman boss. I mean, I'm sorry to say that on record, but it's the truth. And it is very difficult to get people to do things when, there is a general basic reluctance to do so. So an important thing from the personality aspect was my father used to have this statement that he used to keep telling me all the time: just give a long rope, okay? And just let it be. Yes, people can be nasty, people can be bad, but you have a large heart and you give a long rope. And then I used to say, what's the use? Because I used to argue with him. I said, what's the use if I give a long rope? Nothing. He's just going to be doing that, the same thing again tomorrow anyways. So then he will say, you keep giving the long rope. One day they usually hang themselves on it, you know. So it is like, I mean, in a manner of speaking that, everyone gets their due, so you don't worry about it and you be courageous and go on. And in the office, actually, to be honest with you, there have been it's probably very arrogant to say it, but I've really had no mentors in office. Okay. I have been on my own and I have struggled and waded through difficult times all on my own. So, the problem is, in the Indian psyche, if somebody mentors you or something, it's going to be taken very negatively. So, that's what in fact, I always tell my juniors also, don't be obliged to anybody, or don't get mentored by anybody, because if you do that, like red tape and, those kind of things will come on the way sometime or the other in the government scenario. Just be yourself and be responsible for your actions yourself. That way, we are not obliged to anybody. We are on our own, and, there is no push and pull or worry about, many times people, for instance, get promoted because of, pushes and pulls and things like that. And that should never be done. You have to be honest, clean, transparent with money, and be meritorious and work hard. So whatever you get it on your own. You should never be obliged to anybody. And that has actually served me very well, because whatever it is, when you stand up for yourself all the time and not be obliged to anybody, beyond a point, how much can people trouble you? Because it gets seen that, there's nothing that is going to affect her. And if you don't do anything, like you give a long rope and don't do anything bad in return to others, you can, survive without further, issues. Oh, lots and lots of challenges, I tell you. But I'll tell you a few which are seemingly silly, but they are so important for women engineers in the field. See, first of all, there are no toilets. Okay. So if you're working in a remote place and you have to stand in the sun all day with no toilet, it can be really, really very, very frustrating. And, it is really difficult. Sometimes when I have sailed on vessels, most of the time, strangely, I have not been seasick. The men have been seasick in my group, but, generally I have not been. But it's always like there's no fear, because I'm not afraid of anything. But you're always alone and in a cooped up place like a ship, there's nobody to speak to. Everybody is like, all the guys stare at you suspiciously because you are like all the deck hands and people. The scientists, how long can you talk to the co-workers, right? I mean, it is like, so there are times when you can feel very lonely. Okay, that is definitely there. There is nobody to share your thoughts with. Okay, so in fact, going back in time again, I was the only girl in the engineering college, and the boys looked after me very well. But for the first 6 months, all my other classmates, 11th and 12th and all, they had continued with the BSc program. So you won't believe it. It is really funny, but I used to go every weekend on Saturdays to that college just to be with them, because I was so fed up of being alone in a class of boys. And I was still new and had not yet made friends. Over a time, I got used to it, and they are very good friends even today. But so loneliness is one thing. Then practical difficulties like, no toilets and working at the site and things like that. But in that context, actually, I tell you how the Kavarati and the Lakshadweep projects. So I was the only woman there walking around, and it was seen as a real strange thing because one woman, it is, they wear the hijab over there, right? So, I mean, I was going out without, and then the women used to be very curious, and the women and children will follow me wherever I go. And they never understood that, see, this was for the Kavarati plant. It was like, they just thought, what is this going on here? There's this woman standing inside and giving instructions. It's okay to work, but then she's giving instructions to people. This is like unheard of kind of thing. So there was this little hut opposite the plant, and this woman there used to see me day in and day out standing there, and they had a broken stool. And she used to sometimes call me and, offer me that stool to sit on because look at the sun, because the language I did not know. I mean, she'd point to the sun and say, sit down, you must be very tired. So that was touching because, she used to actually, okay, we have to accept it. Here's this woman who is doing this work, but she is like, so let us help her kind of thing. She used to even offer me tea sometimes, which I used to dread to drink, honestly, because the water quality was so bad there. But she was very sweet. Years later, in fact, the year after we made the plant, I probably am rambling a little bit, but this is, it is important. You asked me how I have kind of carried on, right? I mean, these are the things which you cherish and want to continue to do the difficult things, though they have been difficult, knowing that they have been difficult. So once the plant was commissioned, I had gone there for a supervision just to check that, everything, we do a performance analysis after the plant and things like that. So I had gone there. And then I had to go and catch my flight. So then they said, no, there's this woman waiting for you. So she comes there and she knew with a sign language that I have two sons. So she brought these two big shells, okay? And she gave them to me. There were tears in her eyes and she said something I didn't understand. So my site manager told me she's thanking you for what you have done for them. So that is something I cannot forget. And this had such an impact on me that for the last 15 years, I always, whenever I'm down, I think of that and say, okay, so with all the struggle, I made some people happy and I have changed their lives. So that kind of gives me the comfort zone to continue again, working hard. So, of course, the Kavarati project was my first. I was a joint coordinator in that. We had divided into offshore and the mechanical person also was there. But largely the complex part was the offshore and the civil. So, I had to play a big role there. But yes, as we moved on, we made two more plants, Agati and Minikoi. But we started the scaling up activity and we took up a 1 million liter per day barge mounted desalination plant offshore of Chennai. And this was a big challenge. It will always remain, very, very significantly important to me because this was one project where I was leading it all alone. I used to stand at the jetty in the port alone and move things with the riggers, with the scientists, get the vessel to sail. There was a time when the port authorities, when asked for permission, the general manager of the port would say, you do whatever Dr. Purnima tells you. They have stopped ships for me because I wanted my vessel to sail. I got so much cooperation, from the port. And in that particular project, there was basically a long cold water pipe. And it was like I had built in a redundancy known only to myself. Nobody in the team knew as well because I didn't want to make people feel that there might be a challenge and it might get lost or we might lose the pipeline. So I had built in a redundancy without telling others, only with the contractor. And then actually one of the components did fail. But because I had built in that redundancy, we saved the 800 meter, nearly 1 kilometer long pipeline and brought it back to shore. So I think that gave me confidence not only as a person who can lead a difficult offshore project, but also that probably technically I have done what I should have done as a project leader. I kind of felt that I felt complete that I have been able to do the right thing. So even in this project, if I'm allowed to speak a few words, it was an amazing experience because this was all offshore. So there was this one night when three vessels, I was on one vessel which belonged to NIOT. There was a tug master on a tug, and then our contractor was on his vessel. All of us were like several tens of kilometers away from each other. Okay, so the only way to communicate was through the radio. Now, our contractor called me on the phone and said, and I was on the vessel leading the entire operation. And he called me on the phone and said, the tug master is not cooperating. He doesn't want to make this connection. He wants to leave. So I said, that cannot be, because we have, it's very expensive to hire a tug. Daily rates are very high, and the operation had to be complete in the night. Otherwise, next day, we don't know whether the weather would change. So it was very critical that we do it that night. So then I said, okay, I'll speak to him. Then we all came on the same frequency. And I spoke to the tug master and I said, you have to do it. And I tried. So initially I was pretty soft and, I was like requesting and all. Now he was like totally unhappy that a woman is telling him what to do. I mean, he had never, this is not done in the marine industry at all. And especially in India, I mean, a woman giving instructions to a marine contractor, it is never heard of, I guess. So he was very rude. He refused to do. Then I became firm. I also said, I am in charge here and you have to do what you are doing. Otherwise, you won't get paid. And then slowly over the next few hours, I worked around his, he was like having some ideas. Our contractor had some ideas. I had to work between the two, and I kind of struggled for 2 hours on the vessel. But finally, the connection got done. Okay. And it was successfully done that night. We all heaved a sigh of relief. And everyone then told me, madam, now you can go and rest. And everyone was trying to relax and have dinner and stuff. Suddenly, the master of the vessel called me back and said, no, you are required at the radio room again. So I went there, and then the tug master apparently wanted to speak to me. So he said, his voice had suddenly changed. I mean, he was no longer that gruff, quarrelsome person that he had been a few hours ago. Then he just said, madam, thank you very much for working with me, and we have finished the operation. So I will leave. But I just want to tell you one last thing before I go. I had never had, this has been one of the most amazing experiences. Hats off to you. So, hearing that from a hardcore mariner was like little, I didn't know whether to be happy or like get shocked. But yeah, he said that, and he said, this is an unforgettable night. It has been really amazing. So that's how we said, okay, bye-bye. And, like we parted ways. But again, these are the times when you feel, okay, I've done something different and I've done it well. So it feels good.
Purnima.
Success is not accolades from outside. Success is something within. And I think if we take up something, and especially if it is challenging, and you make it successful or make it work as per the original intention, that is success. So especially because we are scientists, we always start with a bunch of calculations, and then after that, it has to be implemented at the field. It has to get implemented, it has to work, and then it has to reach society. If you make all these three things happen, then it is true success. And I think all the projects I've been working on so far have all been that way. And so that is why, it is a good feeling. Yeah, that the one that I built in redundancies, right? So that one was like, we didn't finally fail. I mean, I saved the pipe, so it wasn't a failure. But yeah, I have seen during the course of these projects, failures of components, and some have made me weep. And, again, we have gone back and salvaged it. There was one failure where the contractor lost one of the components. And I was at the headquarters because I had sent the entire team to offshore. They were all on the barge offshore. And I was here with just a couple of draftsmen and skilled technicians because I was running the entire project. It's not just the technical, right? There is so much like logistics, there's finance, there's everything to do in a large project, several tens of crores. So I was handling all that when I got the call that, this has failed. There was a big barge with 30 people, and we did not have a mooring. The mooring had failed, and we didn't know what to do. So the secretary of the ministry was the director was upset, the secretary was upset. And I just called, the secretary kept calling me and I just told the secretary, sir, give me half an hour. I will get back to you and then I will see if we can make it happen. I realized then, and this has been a training for me in the last couple of decades also, that, in a crisis, never get ruffled, never get rattled. In a crisis, stay calm. Otherwise, your mind will not think. While everyone else was like worried and throwing their tantrums, I just said, give me half an hour, let me go back and look. So I took these two technicians to the yard and asked them to look at all the components that we had. I came back and I myself came and did a quick computer analysis, and I've made a quick configuration which would still make the project work in spite of all the issues that we had landed ourselves in. So when I told this to the secretary, he said, I like the idea, but don't take a month. I said, give me 3 days. And in 3 days, we brought the barge back to port, made these new connections, went back, and then with that, we have actually demonstrated the successful project. So when you play a key role in making a project happen, it doesn't get seen outside to people. People wouldn't know that we went through all these things and there were failures and things that they'll only see whether you made the fresh water and the desalinated water in the end. So that gives a personal satisfaction that I did the right thing. That is success. Actually, the water projects, the Lakshadweep projects and all have been really successful, and that has changed the lives of the Lakshadweep people. So there anyway, there's a transformation. We're also working on ocean energy devices. And one of them is a wave-powered navigational buoy, which we have sort of perfected and even handed over to industry. It can replace the imported buoys which India is importing. This actually runs on wave energy. So it's a very different thing, and that has a huge potential in ports. So whenever I've spoken to port people, they are saying they want it, but everything takes a little bit of time in the government. So we are still working on it, but that has a huge potential. This is not only like a down to the hut kind of help, but this is in general for the economy of a port. This will be helpful. We've also made a small off-grid unit called a hydrokinetic turbine, which uses current energy to marine currents in the ocean, to make power. And then this we demonstrated at Andaman. In fact, and people, think there is this feeling, many of the policymakers, it is fashionable today to say, oh, what is the cost per unit? Oh, how many megawatts will you make? But, solar and wind took about 40 years to mature and reach the cost that they are at today. So people should give the opportunity to wait and then see that these things happen. Today, even a 1 to 5 kilowatt off-grid unit has immense utility in Andaman. And all the officials in Andaman have told me, you give us 1 kilowatt to 5 kilowatt off-grid units, people are sitting in darkness and with no water. If that can be used to run a small RO unit, we can actually keep the people happy at the security outpost. Because, Andaman is a security prone zone. It is, we have a lot of security at all the outposts. So they do have a use, even off-grid small units have tremendous use. You don't have to only talk about gigawatts and megawatts. That of course has its place. But in India, with this huge coastline and with this large number of islands in the Arabian Sea and the Bay of Bengal, there is a utility for this. I'll go one step even further. Recently, our team has made a saline water lamp. Okay, so this actually came from the top. Minister and probably even Prime Minister had seen these kind of things somewhere. And I was asked by my secretary, a simple saline water lantern, will you be able to make? And how long will you take? So this is not available. Actually, nobody has really commercialized it anywhere in the world. But I said, give me 3 months, I'll try. Because it's a very small unit. It is not like a large, kilowatts or megawatt kind of thing. So we worked hard for 3 months, and actually we have now made a lantern which doesn't need any external source of power. It can light with just ionization with 2 electrodes and some saline water. It can light lamps. It can also charge a mobile. So it will be really useful in during hazards, because most of the time in hazards the power is cut and then your mobiles lose charge and you're not able to call your near and dear ones. So this is a feature that we have built in. it doesn't make like huge amounts of power. It's in watts, but its applications are tremendous. Whether it is like, poor children in huts who need light in the night to study, or whether it is fishermen who are going in the boat with no access to power, or like I said, in a disaster. So when the minister released this, actually he asked me, ये तो सी वाटर का आप तो चेन्नई में रहती हो, like I mean I hope Hindi is okay. I mean basically he said that if you're going to coastal areas it's okay, what use is it for the whole rest of the country? So what we've done is we have found out exactly how much salt you can add to tap water and still make it work. So even in hinterland, it can be used as a small source of power when the power outage is there. So it is these things now. This is got transferred to industries, and we are trying to. I mean, Lakshadweep and Andaman are asking for large numbers of these, and I think this has a potential to go a long way. So whether it is small power, I mean, I was telling somebody the other day. My mantra is actually watt to megawatt. I mean, every power is important, whether it's in watts or kilowatts or megawatts. All powers are required, and all powers, I mean, green and renewable powers, they are all important and they have their place. Don't look down on small wattages because it's a very small power. Everything has its place, everything has a use in the country today. Yeah, so I'll just give you one more small deviation to your question. Sustainable life is my personal life, I'll tell you, but there's something else I'm doing right now in Lakshadweep. Right now, the project is in full swing. All this time, the Lakshadweep desalination plants were working using the diesel generator grid. Okay, so first time in the world, I have now taken on the challenge of putting up an OTEC powered desalination plant. That's a ocean thermal energy conversion. We make power from the ocean thermal difference. If the surface of the sea is warm, and as you go down, it becomes colder. So this difference in temperature can be used to make power. So we are not promising pumping power to the grid. We are focusing on the water, but the water will be diesel generator free. So I am trying to move towards diesel displacement. Okay. So clean energy and fresh water simultaneously. And please wish me luck that I make a success of this first ever project. Okay. So that's for sustainability. Okay. Everything should be green and clean. And that's the way we are looking at in our group. On a personal life, as I said, there's always stresses and factors which pull and push and everything. Apart from the technical challenges, people are always a challenge, and a lot of issues. I always tell other women, have hobbies. Okay, you need a space for yourself in spite of the like the daily living issues. Okay, you need a space for yourself. You need to create something for yourself, so that so I have a lot of I like to take on stuff, as well as I'm probably slightly good at some of the things I do. I actually used to sing Hindustani classical music. Of late I have kind of given up, but I love music, Hindustani classical. So that whenever I'm, in fact, since my school days, if I was like stressed out with an exam, I'll come home and sing, and that used to de-stress me. I do a lot of gardening, and there is this wrong notion that a person who might be working 10 to 12 hours in the office each day with huge responsibilities will not cook, and that's such a silly stereotypical thing. I love cooking, and I love baking. And there is not one birthday that has gone by of my children when I haven't baked a cake myself for them. Okay. So if we take on things which these relax you, I mean, these are the things that take your mind off tensions, and I love to read. So if you keep yourself engaged in other activities as well, one thing is the physical tiredness ebbs away, and mentally you feel fresher after you have done the other activity. So that's how you can lead sustainable lifestyles. You need to engage yourself in many more things and not just get caught up in the negativity alone. Yeah, so there are the younger scientists in the office, and there are some things that we need to do I'll talk in two different dimensions. One is what do we do at the policy levels, and then what do we do as individuals. At the policy level, still India is not geared to make daycare or creches and offices, and I think that really needs to change. See, flexi hours and daycare. This is something that would go a very long way. See, there's a stereotypical thing that women will take more leave. They they need to do something, take care of the chores at home. And see, why can't the man attend the parent teachers meeting? Why should the woman have to go every time, right? So this is at the personal level, but in the policy level, see, you won't believe it, I've had to really fight my way to get a creche for this institute, and I fought for it long after my sons entered college. Okay, I mean, I did not need it. So people might think, okay, selfish reasons. Now, for me, I didn't need it at all. But I fought for them because I was an outsider in a different city, not knowing the language, and I had so much troubles. Okay, bringing up the children and making sure that everything is all right at home. Of course, you need a lot of support from your spouse. There is no doubt about it. My husband has always supported me and the family, but taken turns always whenever there is an issue. But that is, of course, from the Indian males have to get into that mode. But from the policy perspective, see, the government it is looked at more as labor laws. If I mean in an organization, if there is like 50 women labor, then but why aren't scientists also doing labor work here? I mean, so much we are struggling. Why should the rules not be applied? So I had to really fight to get the creche. The moment the creche was started, the women used to use me as the front to talk to the directors and the secretary. And, I did that. And finally, the creche has started here in the institute for the last couple of years. But they do come often to me and say, Madam, how do you manage? I'm having this problem. I'm having that problem. Keeping the kids safe on campus in a creche has far-reaching implications on the productivity of the woman. So we need to have these kind of policies in place, and not just see, there is this thing in the government system. I'm sorry, probably you're not familiar with some of the government things that under the garb of policy and trying to help women, a childcare leave has been instituted. Okay, so people can take up to 2 years of leave for their child's whatever. I'm sorry, but I have not liked this scheme at all, because that encourages women to take leave at the drop of a hat. Instead, were you to give flexi hours? See, some people have like dropping of kids or cooking to do in the morning, so they'd like to come a little late. And some people might want to go early so that they can look after the child when the child comes from school. So largely, if you keep some kind of a penalty, as well as some kind of, you build in a proper system where you can have flexi hours and give the people a little bit, sometimes for 1 hour's work, the person ends up taking leave for the whole day. Okay, so we have to look at it from a slightly different perspective. If you want to help women, it is not just increasing the number of leaves that they're eligible for. It is to empower them to come to office while sorting out the problems at home. And that, I don't think the childcare leave is a solution for that at all. So that's on the policy. And as far as personal things are concerned, I've always there is, today's women, young women, we all come from nuclear families. I also came from a nuclear family, and they're spoiled. Okay. The concept of hard work is not there. One thing, maybe I lived for several years in the US, so I know how to fend for myself, and that taught me, because we had to do the dishes, we had to, there's no help, nothing. Here there is that, I feel many of the women are not geared for hard work. And it's not only the women, actually, even the young men, the young scientists in my group, the guys have absolutely no this thing about doing hard work at all. So my advice to all the women especially is always don't shy away from doing hard work, and the couple has to work really hard to make the first 10-15 years of their life meaningful, and cross the hurdle so that you mature into somebody who can handle the problems. So this is a message which is not only to women but even the young men. young men and women in India, we may have crossed 70 years and everything, of independence. All that is okay, Amrit Kal, but mindset still needs to think that we need to struggle more to utilize the freedom for better things. Yeah, that's a very interesting question. I have generally always worked hard, so I don't think that is a lacuna from my side. I have been handling problems with equanimity, but yes, I probably tend to get a bit short-tempered. So the younger Purnima would be more fun. No, it is also, it's like what the environment does to you. I mean, when it is a male-dominated environment and you're struggling alone, there is a tendency to come out as fiery and vocal. But I don't like to be a doormat. Okay, I'll talk my views. And today, even today, however vocal I might be, and whatever people might, say that she's very fiery and vocal. But the thing is, people always say she's extremely honest and her files are very clean. And that's what I would really like to hear, right? And I mean, it is really good. But the fiery and vocalness comes because of probably the next generation won't need to be so vocal. So if possible, I could have probably been little bit softer. But then on the other hand, it's also a catch-22. I don't know whether I would have been able to make my way through if had I been softer. So, it cuts both ways. So far, it has been fine. And I think there are very few, there have been difficult times, but I don't think I regret anything. So, probably, I don't know. I'm sorry. I think I'm not able to really pinpoint anything of that nature. But like I said, probably a more of equanimity and a calmer outlook might probably would have been even better. Yeah, ultimate goal is like we must push other technologies for clean energy like ocean energy. And in a few years, I'll also retire. So what I'm trying to do right now, to be honest, is leave a legacy behind for my team scientists. Okay. I want them to take forward things in such a way that things will really become, will move towards ocean energy in the near future. And for that, I have brought in international cooperations. I've struggled hard to make India a member of the Ocean Energy Systems Technology Collaboration Program under the IEA. And right now, we have funding from the USDA, that's a US Trade Development Agency. And we also have funding, Shell, the big oil and gas company is funding us for a design. So I'm trying to get all these things to happen, and I'm trying to give responsibilities to more and more younger scientists, so that many times in India, no, it is very personality dependent, unfortunately. Many of the things, whether it's politics or whether it's a government R&D, or, whether it is a ISRO or a DRDO, it's like very personality dependent. So once a person goes, there's a vacuum, and then this has happened to desalination programs in other departments. I don't want to name them. Once the person at the top retired, there's nobody else working now. It has become a big vacuum over there. So it should not be personality dependent. So things should continue and should move on, and that's what I have been I'm working on towards now. I have done a lot of things, and I'm still trying to make more things happen and ensure that people are brought into the fold and made to do the things, so that there will be a continuity even after I go. The basic mantra for me is hard work, which was taught by my father. So the moment I get up, it is like a list of things to do for the day. And the thing is, I have to work towards making these two large projects happen. And that has to motivate me to get up and go. And because it's going to be a big, I mean, it will be, once the OTEC project is successful, it can lead to many big things. So it is something that we really all need to work towards getting it successful for the country. It's not only for the group or the institute, but in terms of clean energy and water, it will make a big impact. And then it will make India's position in the international scenario even more strong. Already people are looking at us because we have done the desalination and We are famous world over for this. This will make it even better. And already the US is coming and talking to me for the what we're doing with this technology. So India's place will become stronger. So I have been reading a lot of Zen Buddhism, and there is a book uh, on the art of motorcycle maintenance. Okay, there is a chapter in that. In fact, I've been like mulling over it for the last 1 year because I want to write something. And the basic fundamental question, okay, what is quality? This is bothering me for several years. How do we define quality? This is a sentence from that book, and this is constantly at the back of my mind. What is quality? What do we do in India to bring about quality? And can quality be quantified? And how do we quantify it in the scientific and engineering uh, regime, not necessarily only in arts and literature and poetry or something like that? How do we quantify that in an engineering scenario? Can it be quantified at all?